Tyrrell P34 six-wheeler from 1976. As you can tell, I'm in a really noisy background, so I'll top fast. Look at the massive rear wing. Possibly not as effective. If you look at a modern Formula One car, you'll see a lot more dive planes, a lot more aggressive aerodynamics have gone into it, but this is how they did it in the 70s, and it was still working. Massive rear tyres, DFE Ford engine, okay, pumping out a lot of power. These engines were in almost everything back in the day. Very noisy, and the exciting part is the front end of this car. If you look how narrow it is, that's because Formula One regulations changed for 76 season, and they narrowed the front wing to 1.5 metres. And Derek Gardner had a great idea. He thought, right, rather than have the front wheels poking outside the aerodynamics, making all that dirty air, I'm going to make this car faster in a straight line by shrouding two smaller wheels behind the front wing. And that's what you've got. Tiny little front wheels tucked in here behind this front wing. This flicks the air over those wheels. Because the front wheels make so much dirty air, there's a really clean way of doing it. They reckon it brought them about 45 horsepower and about 6 or 7 miles an hour in a straight. That was what they needed to catch the winning Ferrari in the hands of Niki Lauda.
Patrick Depailler was a hooligan of the First Order and one of my favourite Formula One drivers from the 80s. He was an absolute savage behind the wheel, and his onboard videos are legendary. This is him shredding Monaco in the P34, and look at the understeer. All 4 front wheels skidding, and he cures that by smashing the gas pedal. That's how they race him back then, just balls to the wall.
So these 4 wheels do the turning, but the steering wheel is only connected to the front axle, and there's a little relay system that connects the front wheels to the second set of front wheels, which also do some turning, but not at the same rate as the furthest forward. There's a slight overlap, there's an offset in these front tyres as well, so they're not even lined up exactly in line, they're slightly off. So they've very cleverly got a little biasing system in the front axle that feeds more braking power into these tyres than this one. And the result is you get fantastic braking and stability in a straight line, at least, until you start turning the wheel, then things get a bit dicey. It's very clever engineering, and it really was way ahead of its time. And a lot of the other teams, at least 3, Williams, Ferrari, dabbled with 6-wheel cars. They tried 4 at the rear. But the front wheel option was almost certainly the winner. Aerodynamics and mechanical grip. 60% more contact patch out of using these 4 as opposed to 2 bigger wheels. It's hard to wrap your head around that, but that's what the engineers told me, and I believe them. You can see this, because with the kit off, you can see how cramped it is. Particularly this roll bar, which is where your shins should be. So I'm just trying to sit myself up in this car like an armchair to try and get my leg angle right, so I can get my legs underneath the roll bar so I can use the brakes and the throttle, which is an important part of using a Formula One car. In subsequent years, this was built in 1975, raced in 76, and in 77 they moved the roll bar, I'm sure because the likes of Jody Scheckter said, enough of that, let's put it somewhere sensible. But it's, yeah, I'll find out in a minute what it feels like when you're driving it, but I'm quite upright, my head's going to be sticking out in the wind, so I'm going to feel 180 miles an hour coming straight at me in this incredible DFE engine. It's going to be pumping out. It's max revs, 10,000 RPM. I'm allowed to use 9.5, which is practically all of it. Almost 500 horsepower. Just an amazing, it just feels like a big scaled up toy. You look at these tiny little wheels, but all the refined detail that they built into this car with a little bit of modern engineering to make it a little bit safer, which is always nice. But yeah, what a thing. Look at it. Absolutely amazing.
Bloody hell. Well, here I go. In the Tyrrell P34, built in 1975, the same year I was born. It's a car that Jackie Stewart thought should never have been built. Jody Scheckter wasn't too sure about it either. You can't see anything up my mirrors, oh my god. I mean, okay, I can just about see what I'm doing. I'm sitting in the most extraordinary position. I feel like I've just sat down in front of the telly with a curry to watch a James Bond movie or something. I mean, I don't feel like I'm bolted and trapped into a Formula One missile, but I am. This is what takes some getting used to. I'm on track as well with Alonso's 2005 F1 car. Slightly different era, obviously a lot faster. I swear I keep looking in the mirrors until I get these tyres warm. I feel very silly. But I'm living the dream. This is the car that I had as a kid in my Scale Electric set with Polar still, who were a competitor. It was the Tyrrell official team set with the Palier versus Nicky Lauda, who just missed out of the championship that year to James Hunt. The Titanic battle, incredible bravery by Lauda, but this was an amazing design. Whoa, bloody hell, around the wind. Designed by Derek Gardner, who saw an opportunity because the rules in F1 had changed and the new regulations stipulated a 1.5 metre wide front wing, and he saw a way to make this car more slippery in a straight line by shrinking the front wheels and doubling their number. So that's why we've got 4 front wheels. Whoa, whoa, what is happening? I better concentrate. Oh, what? Red flag, you've got to be kidding me. Oh, that is tragic. I'm already starting to get a little bit more at home in this machine, but it is so out there and different to anything I've driven before. Oh, there you go. Well, the engine tick over is not particularly high on this, so revs have just dropped off and the engine's cut itself out, but that's fine. There's just no steering lock on this at all. This car's hilarious. It's a pretty eclectic collection, but I mean, we're spanning pretty much all the years up to 2008, so you're looking at a 30-year spread, and there's me in this one. Steel brakes, and the funny thing with this car, because it's got 4 front wheels, I was wondering about how the brake bias would work, because in a racing car you can adjust how much braking you have on the front versus the rear, and the rears are massive, so actually you probably want quite a lot of braking on the back end, so that'll make a bit tail happy, but you've got 4 tyres at the front working to stop you. But when the weight transfers forwards, it mostly goes to the ones closest to where I'm sitting, so this first row of wheels, they get the benefit of the weight and that gives it the braking grip. So the ones at the front get starved of grip to some extent, so they've actually got a system that bleeds some of the pressure off the fronts, so it kind of gauges it and automatically adjusts. It gives you less braking bite on the very front wheels. But those ones, they're the ones that do the real turning. So your steering wheel is attached to the furthest front wheels, so that does the majority of it, and then there's a little sprocket system that also turns the ones behind it, but your steering wheel is directly connected to the front tyres. What's amazing on track is that it's actually quite seamless. When you turn the wheel, honestly, you're not that aware that you're turning 4 tyres instead of 2, partly probably because I can't see them, because they're buried under this enormous piece of bodywork. Anyway, it's a ride. I've been sitting in this car for 5 minutes under that red flag contemplating how the hell these guys raced in a car that was this uncomfortable. Of course, it's dawned on me during that time. I felt exactly what they would have been feeling, and that is just pure hunger to get out of the track and compete. In my case, to get a feel for what this thing's really like. It's just such a privilege being in this thing. Let's get this warmed up. Let's feel that DFB. Let's get these tyres, all 6 of them working. Feel what this car is really about. The beautiful bark out of the engine's going to tighten that belt a bit more. I haven't been able to tighten them fully because I can't steer if I do that. I'm like I'm riding on a motorbike behind me. Alright. Up to 4th gear. Slightly uncomfortable pedal position. Hard to heel and toe, but I can just about pull it off. Fantastic pull on the engine, the 3-litre DFB V8. Back in period, it was knocking out 470 brake, currently around 500. That's very good, yeah, as you expect. No turbo, with pure power. Some interesting shudders and shimmies through the chassis. It was known for flexing back in the day. Tony sector's biggest fear was that something would fall off, making the car unsafe. I'm in a tight hairpin, and you get quite a bit of understeer at the apex. Let's see if that improves over time. Beautiful crackle on deceleration. Very light steering. Whoa! miles even. Let's get this right. Bloody hell, it's twitchy. Oh, I'm playing the first. Oh, Jesus. All the same things in. Bloody hell. Oh, old hairpin. On aerodynamics, I really want these tyres to be hot. I want the mechanical grip to keep me on the bloody track. Just starting to feel it coming, but it still feels very light in my hands. Grip is excellent. I suppose it's not a surprise with all that front rubber. Designed to have 60% more footprint. Locking the rears a bit. Oh yeah, here comes the front grip.
The kind of drive that you wish would never end, except for my shins that were relieved to be separated from the roll bar. It's an amazing insight into the practical engineering of the 70s, everything physically connected, working in harmony and feeding it back to the driver. By return, it's not the kind of car that drives itself, you have to manhandle it to extract the performance. On the limit under braking to make the most of what the little and the large tyres have to offer, an aggressive driving style to pitch those fat rear tyres into a slip angle to generate cornering force. It's left me with a huge respect for the drivers who work the wheel of these beasts for lap after lap across multiple seasons, because they really were on the limit and having to constantly think about the right way to drive the Tyrrell. These days F1 tech is so much harder to read, the aerodynamics are incredibly subtle even though the cars are enormous, whereas this Tyrrell just screams its features at you because it's so radically different to anything else. There probably won't be anything that ever comes close to this car in terms of reinventing the wheel, but as they say, the past is history, the future's a mystery, so maybe there's somebody out there who's already working on the next mind-blowing project. Thanks for watching and see you on the next mission.